Hi there, we're here with WSUV Real Estate Investments. My name's Tim Miller.
I'm Tommy Apton.
And I'm Robert Reyes.
And we're here talking about the Case-Shiller Index and how you can use it to determine your next home purchase. So, what you're probably wondering now is, what's the Case-Shiller Index and why do I even need to use it? I've got a realtor that's perfectly good. I can just go talk to them and they're going to recommend an excellent home for me. Well, it's not always the case. And the reason for that is realtors got homes that they need to sell regardless. They might be awesome homes, they might be crappy homes. Either way, they're going to try to unload them on you so that they can get some money. So they're biased in what they're presenting to you, which is why we need a tool that's going to eliminate that bias. And that tool is the Case-Shiller Index. The Case-Shiller Index works by looking at home prices over large periods of time and looking at the variations and how they fluctuate. So, for instance, it would look at one home at one point in time and look at how it goes up and down over time. That same home goes up and down over time. So for instance, you could have a home and the base year, let's call it the year 2000, it would assign it a value of 100, meaning that is the base price. So if you had, if you looked at it, say 16 years later and the value is at 125, that means that the value of the home from that base year has gone up 25%. So with that in mind, Kami, could you explain to me what seasonal adjustment is and how that factors into the index?
Yeah, exactly. So seasonal adjustment, in essence, is basically when, for example, if you live in the city of Chicago and there's a home on the waterfront, so seasonally the price would change in the summer when it's nice and beautiful because it's on the lake. The home would be much higher price compared to in the dead of winter when no one wants to live there. It's miserable. Trust me, been there. So the home prices are going to be different for those two. The Case-Shiller Index basically eliminates that bias and purely just looks at the price without the changes in price over like a 2-month difference. Yeah.
So, hypothetically, if we were going to pick 3 cities, let's go with San Francisco, New York City, and Atlanta, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the information for that. What does it kind of look like over time? What are the 3 cities?
So, one of the biggest factors that has to do with, obviously, the rise and decline of the housing prices is definitely the 2008 crash. That had a huge effect on housing prices. But each of those cities did have a different reaction to it. So if you look at, let's say New York City, for example, it didn't dramatically drop it within that year. It was definitely over time it declined.
Yeah.
If you look at San Francisco, it immediately hit and then probably within months just tanked. And then you have cities like Atlanta, who are very not as wealthy as compared to the other two.
Yeah.
So they're kind of at the 100 level, but then they didn't really change. If anything, they just dropped below that 100 level, maybe to
leading up to that crash, you had the housing market just getting grossly overinflated.
Yes.
Did that reflect in there too? How before the crash, leading up to it, what did those curves look like?
Yeah, if you compare to that base year of 2000, January 2000, which we know that's the 100 level, right before up until probably around 2006, you just saw a huge incline, just going up and up and up. I think New York hit about 200. I think so.
Okay.
That's a 100% increase just right there. And then 2008 hit, and like I said, you go back to those 3 examples.
So did all 3 cities have that rapid growth like that leading up to it?
Yes, and that's actually what you would be able to compare, not just for those 3 cities, but for the entire country. If you looked at all 20, I believe.
Atlanta didn't have quite as much growth.
Not as much, but they all had the same tendency.
Some, but that it went up and then it went sharply down.
Yes.
But they're in recovery now.
Yes, but like I said, each although they all followed the same trend, the numbers were statistically different from one another.
Yeah. But they followed that same kind of pattern, just at various rates.
Yes.
Robert, during that time, you heard the term underwater thrown a lot, and there was a lot of fear of that word. Can you explain to us what the term underwater means and how it applies?
Definitely. Well, the term underwater, specifically for mortgages, is when the balance of the mortgage loan is higher than the fair market value of that property. So I would have had to buy a home in March of 2006, so that way that home is worth as much as I paid for it. And I found out by comparing the index in March of 2006 that to the index price of January 2016, that they both had a comparable index of 216 at that time. But homeowners are more likely to be underwater in New York, especially if they purchased the home between 2005 and 2008, where their indexes are all higher and from back then compared to now. So for some people, if they bought a home in Atlanta, though, in the area of January 2000, I would say they made a foolish investment compared to just leaving their money in the bank, because from 2011 to 2013, the index for Atlanta is less than its base period. So also there are smaller changes in the index compared to New York and San Francisco in general as time passes. So what can be interpreted also is that there were smaller gains and losses in the home values in Atlanta compared to those other regions. And on the flip side though, guys, some may actually say it was a wise investment since they are not currently underwater. But as an investor, they may have been more gains in the stock market, or even just keeping the money in the bank and saving it rather than buying a home at that time.
Yeah, it's hard to say. If you bought it in that base year, or even when it was dipped well below the base year, you've obviously made more money than what you started out with if you got it right now. But if you had put it in New York or San Francisco or something like that, you'd have a lot more money. So
True.
It's kind of a subjective thing. So just in conclusion here, if we had to pick a house in one of those three cities, which do you think would be the wise investment to go with right now?
I definitely say San Francisco. Just through, if you were to pick a home, let's say in between that 2000 to before the crash, or even during the crash, obviously probably would have been the best time to purchase a home if you had that kind of money.
Yeah.
Because I mean, right now San Francisco is just going up and up, and kind of going back to where New York was prior to the crash of 2008. So if you had the money and bought a home during that decline and now own the home, you would have.
Yeah, and it's interesting to note, just looking at the data that we had, San Francisco dipped way harder than New York did, but New York hasn't come back to that really high point that it was at before the crash happened, whereas San Francisco, it took that hard hit, but it bounced right back. So hopefully we won't have another big housing market crash like we did.
Yeah,
so assuming that there isn't another...
Assuming that there's not going to be some catastrophic market failure,
what do we recommend, guys?
I think San Francisco is the way to go.
San Francisco. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.